Hello, everyone. This is Overtime. My name is Nick Soutter, and thank you for joining us. Trump lawyers have met in person with Fulton County District Attorney's Office in Georgia. The district attorney opened an investigation into whether or not Georgia state law had been violated when election officials were pressured and intimidated into falsifying the results of the 2020 election. We covered this, and we played a rather shocking audio of Trump really making demands of the Secretary of State that he just had to find these other votes and had to rule the other way. This is a president intimidating a Secretary of State to reach a conclusion other than what the results actually were. The investigation itself was opened, in fact, when that recording, which included Donald Trump in his meeting with the Secretary of State saying, quote, "I just want you to find 11,780 more votes." Senate Republicans launched a blistering attack on the Democratic voting rights bill today. Biden has said that tomorrow he will make a personal plea to the U.S. Senate and to the Senate Democrats to unite to change the chamber rules to allow passage of the bill. The bill called, quote, the Freedom to Vote Act, which is suspiciously like the Clean Air Act. Just I understand, but oh, dear Lord. The Freedom to Vote Act, which would make Election Day a national holiday, expand access to mail-in voting, and expand the U.S. Justice Department oversight of local election jurisdictions with a history of discrimination. As you may recall, that was pulled back some recently, and the effect has been quite shocking. This comes at a time when former President Donald Trump's false allegations about the 2020 election have inspired a wave of new voting restrictions in Republican-controlled states. This includes, but is not limited to, voter ID laws, which have repeatedly and conclusively been shown to demonstrate to disenfranchise far more voters than instances of fraud that are stopped. In fact, it does so by several orders of magnitude. The Democratic bill is considered the Democrats' last chance to get ahead of this by November 8th, where they run the risk of losing control of the Senate. They are stopped by the filibuster rule, which essentially changes the number of votes required from 50 in the Senate, at least when there's a Democratic presidency, a Democratic White House, from the simple 50 majority to a much harder 60 majority vote. With only 50 seats in the Senate, a single Democratic dissenting vote pretty much prevents any legislation from passing. The filibuster rule has actually been changed several times in the past, most notably in 2013 when the Democrats suspended the rule for federal judges and administrative appointees over concern of Republican filibusters, which had brought Obama's appointments to a grinding halt. 4 years later, Republicans did the same thing and ended the filibuster for the Supreme Court nominations, allowing Trump to install 3 conservative justices to the nation's highest court. All 50 Democrats must vote in unison if they are to suspend the filibuster. Within the last week, North Korea has successfully completed 2 more missile tests. In response, the United States has imposed sanctions on 6 North Korean and 1 Russian individual, as well as a Russian business firm, which the U.S. claims was responsible for helping North Korea obtain the material it needs for the test. The sanctions freezes their assets and is thought to discourage people from assisting North Korea. Nobody in the U.S. or U.S.-related individuals or organizations are allowed to do business with them. Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, I don't know. I'm going to take a stab at it. Jens Stoltenberg said that NATO is willing to talk with Russia about arms control and missile deployments if it would avert a war in Europe, but will not give Moscow veto over Ukraine's ambition to join NATO. Quote, there is a real risk of a new armed conflict in Europe, he said. Moscow reiterated that the Ukraine entering NATO is a deal breaker and they describe the situation as, quote, very dangerous with no clear resolution. They have denied planning to invade the Ukraine, but have said that they need guarantees for their own security, including NATO withdrawal back to 1997 borders, which are demands that, of course, NATO non-starter. Meanwhile, the Consumer Price Index, used to measure inflation in the United States, has posted its biggest gain in nearly 40 years. Up 7% for the year. This higher cost of living, blamed largely on supply chain issues as the result of the COVID-19 pandemic, has largely had its biggest impact on Joe Biden's approval ratings. The common way in which government fights inflation is by raising the Federal Reserve rate, the rate at which the government lends out money. Chris Zaccarelli, the chief investment officer at the Independent Advisor Alliance in Charlotte, North Carolina, says, quote, the Fed is going to be forced to begin raising rates in March, and depending on the political pressure on them from both sides of the aisle, they are going to have to raise rates at least 4 more times this year and potentially more the year after that. Meanwhile, calls are increasing for Prime Minister Boris Johnson to resign after he admitted that he attended a BYOB gathering at his official residence during Britain's first coronavirus lockdown in violation of the restrictions regarding social gatherings. This call includes numerous people, including a number of lawmakers. Sorry. Well, hold on one second. All right, there we are. Okay. So this, okay, so we're talking about Boris Johnson. Yeah, this upset a large number of people, including lawmakers, since these lawmakers have described how these same rules that Boris Johnson was flouting kept them from being at the bedside of dying loved ones so that they could follow the law while Boris Johnson was having a party and, hobnobbing with people who worked at 10 Downing Street and other guests. So leaders of every opposition party have now called for Boris Johnson's resignation, and even within his own party, he's facing some calls for resignation. The Scottish Conservative leader, Douglas Ross, being the first to say he should resign. The Labour Party leader has said that the public now thinks that Boris Johnson is a liar and that he will never be able to escape that image. Quote, the party's over, Prime Minister. After months of deceit and deception, that pathetic that pathetic spectacle of a man who has run out of road, his defense that he didn't realize he was at a party is so ridiculous that it's actually offensive to the British people. However, a number of lawmakers remain loyal and suggest that while he has taken on a great deal of water, he's, quote, not quite sunk yet. That is the minority opinion. Mr. Ross has said that he will be submitting a letter of no confidence to the party chairman to trigger a challenge, the no confidence vote in Prime Minister. They need 54 votes out of the 360 Conservative members of Parliament. Conservative lawmaker Roger Gale has said that he believes they will easily clear that bar. Meanwhile, the Canadian province of Quebec, I'm on a roll today. Province of Quebec has announced that they will begin fining residents who, absent a medical exemption, refuse to take the COVID-19 vaccine. Quote, right now, these people, they put a very important burden on our health network, and I think it's normal that the majority of the population is asking that there be a consequence, said Quebec Prime Minister François Legault. It's a question of fairness for the 90% of the population who made some sacrifices. I think we owe them this kind of measure. They also announced that residents will have to be vaccinated in order to buy alcohol or cannabis. This alone resulted in the average scheduled appointments going from 1,500 per day to a whopping 6,000 yesterday. Meanwhile, in Italy, Proof of vaccination or a negative test is required before entering a workplace. Further, vaccines are mandatory for people 50 and older, as well as all teachers and healthcare workers. Later this month, Greece will be making the vaccine mandatory for people over 60, and next month, Austria says it will make the vaccine mandatory for all its citizens ages 14 and older. In light of a discrimination lawsuit filed by women's U.S. Soccer against U.S. Soccer, which had been largely thrown out because the women's team had been offered the men's deal and rejected it, also because the women had actually made more than the men did, and because the men would have actually made more had they had the women's deal. U.S. Soccer has, in light of that, said that they will no longer collectively bargain with the teams individually, and that each team must agree together with U.S. Soccer on a single contract, which will be given to both teams equally. This was hailed, and they have said, quote, "This is the best path moving forward for all involved." This was hailed as a victory by most political and news organizations that had supported the women's team. However, the women's team called this a PR stunt, saying that they did not want a contract identical to the men's contract, as it did not contain health care, dental, severance, or a base salary. U.S. Soccer has reiterated that it will not offer them a different deal. They will only get this one deal that is offered to all of their teams. They will also not negotiate for a I am at this point repeating myself. They will not renegotiate that deal separately for them. So the women's team has therefore this week chosen to, under the terms of the original contract of their old deal, to forego trying to get a different deal or taking the men's deal, and instead extend their old contract, the one that they sued on the grounds that it was discriminatory. This makes twice the number of times the women have been offered an identical contract to the men and have rejected it. It is also with a heavy heart that Overtime reports that the independent organization for clearing landmines, which works primarily in Cambodia, the APOPO, has announced that Magawa passed away last weekend. Awarded a medal for bravery and humanitarian aid, he is credited with discovering over 100 landmines and other explosives during his years of work in Cambodia. He was reportedly in good health, spent most of the last week playing with his usual enthusiasm. But he started to slow down towards the end of the weekend, and he showed less interest in his food and died shortly after his 8th birthday. Magawa was an African giant pouched rat. And that is the news for this week. So thank you all for joining us. I don't know, we are absent Joe today, which is understandable. Unfortunately, we've canceled on Joe several times, all of it entirely my fault, and we very nearly canceled today, but we have managed to pull forward. So I'm going to quickly check the live chat for a little bit, and then and we got all the usuals in the live chat: Blazing Wizard Pope and on, Titan and Sinister, of course. Thank you both. Thank you all. Jake 4D, who says he was first but wasn't because I'm a solipsist, which means even when he's first, I'm first. So let's see. Yeah, trying to get your calculus homework done by. I mean, if I could get Landon to do my homework too. I mean, Jesus, but yeah. So I think what we're looking at, poached rat. Yeah. Whew, yeah. Hey, listen, I'm glad I was able to put a show together at all, quite frankly. So I do think this looks like this may be the end for Boris. Now he's been in trouble before and he's gotten out, which people have said and mentioned, and there's been no confidence, people trying to do the no confidence votes, but having a party during lockdown, and again, what the people opposing him have pointed out was that there are lawmakers who lost loved ones to COVID, and they could not be at their bedside. And they couldn't be at their bedside because of these restrictions. while Boris Johnson was having a party with cocktails and all. I mean, I think you can get away with pissing a lot of people off with buffoonery and shit like that. And then he's lied about it, and he's lied about it repeatedly. And he issued an apology which sounded sincere to me. But I'm not that hard to fool when it comes to apologies. I think in general, if I think it sounds insincere, I'm usually the last one. I am the low bar on whether or not the apology is sincere. It seems sincere to me, but that would probably, I think, be too little, too late, even if it was sincere, which it may not have been. I don't know. I think Boris Johnson is probably going to be gone. It is one more thing. I'm the more I learn about the parliamentary system, the more I do like it. And I kind of wish we had it. I think it would change a lot in the U.S., but it is what it is. How much weight do you, Jake 4D, how much weight do you think Biden, how much weight do you, sorry, I'm also having a hard time. I'm always having a hard time reading, but now it's a little harder than usual. But Biden being into office plays into Russia's motives in the Ukraine, specifically Biden. That's hard to say. I think whoever the president is always plays into what Russia does. If Eisenhower had won instead of Kennedy, I don't think we would have had the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, this isn't to blame Kennedy, and I think Kennedy managed to get us out of it in a way that probably no other president could have. It was a brilliant maneuver. He lost, by the way, but he got us out in one piece, which was a challenge. But Kennedy was young, and they said, okay, he's young, we can push him, and we can bully him, and it turned out not to be true. And by the time they figured that out, it was too late. So, the fact that Kennedy was elected was part of what caused the Cuban Missile Crisis, for better or for worse. I think if Trump had been reelected, they might not actually be pushing forward into the Ukraine. They might not have to do the distraction. And it looks like now they're also trying to manipulate oil and gas in the rest of Europe by threatening the Ukraine. One problem is if we do sanctions against Russia, Russia's not the only one that gets hurt. It also hurts Europe because they get a great deal of their gas from Russia, and so sanctions against Russia is also an oil and natural gas tax against the rest of Europe. So, hard to think of it that way, but that's what it translates to. So, Russia is kind of fucking with everybody with this, and it's very hard to tell what they're doing. I think with Trump, they wouldn't feel obligated to do it. They would feel that Trump is in their back pocket. They don't need to push him around. They own his ass and can do whatever they want. And when they do it, Putin will be called a strong leader that is envied by Trump. I mean, how many times did he do that already? So I think that because Biden is in office, that is part of this. They're testing Biden's resolve. I think his low numbers have made it more enticing for them to do it now. If his numbers were higher, they might have reconsidered, because they do have a pretty good idea for how American politics work. They're aware it's not the way their politics work, but it's how, they know how ours work. Very similar to the fact that we have some understanding of how theirs work, and we understand Putin doesn't have to satisfy anybody in terms of the average citizen of Russia. It doesn't really matter what they think. He's going to tell them what they think. But there are people he does need to satisfy, and that's potentially life-threatening if he doesn't. So it's a different system, and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, so my answer is I think we were going to get a challenge with a new president. I think we always do. And I think that his low numbers made it enticing to do it now. How far he'll go. I really enjoyed our discussion with Commander Lance Mcmillan last week, where he basically said that in his view, again, not being an expert in Russia, but being an expert in war theory, his view was this was really just saber rattling and it had to look serious as possible, but he's going to come out of this, walking out of this, saying that he made a victory and maybe get some of the old sanctions lifted, and that'll appease the people. Our original sanctions were designed to get him assassinated. We targeted people who were capable of killing him, who were friends of his, but more interested in money than the friendship, and would be willing to do it if he doesn't find a way to fix this. Now, he's been staying alive by finding other ways of getting money to them, but it's getting harder, and laundering money through Deutsche Bank that comes from Donald Trump is harder and harder to do. Yes, I said it. It also happens to be true, at any rate. So I think that's where, and there was one other, I wanted to dovetail. Yeah, we're going to have on Lance Mcmillan tomorrow, ostensibly, assuming that, I'm well enough to do it. We'll be having him on. He was one of the planners of the logistics for the invasion of Iraq. And that really kind of changed his entire view on the U.S. military, our force projection, and what we were doing out there. And it turned him basically from, as I've heard it said, from a conservative into a liberal. And it was a clusterfuck of a situation, as one could expect. And I'm very proud that we were able to have someone that, he was an advisor to the Fifth Fleet out of CENTCOM for the planning. So we'll look into that. But all right, so let's see. I think there was one other question. That'll be tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Tomorrow's Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, with our other resident troll who's probably still listening, is Andring. So we're looking forward to that. There's also, I did see one other question that I wanted to answer, and then Europe is moving away from natural gas, but by destabilizing. Yeah, I think the Blazing Pope has it. I think so. Blazing Pope said, quote, "Europe is moving away from natural gas. It's a dying industry, but destabilizing Europe and pushing up the price, Russia thinks but by destabilizing Europe and pushing up the price, Russia can milk the dying cow," close quote. Yeah, I think it's milk the dying cow, and right now because if Russia causes enough problems over there, they start the European side of NATO starts pushing back on the U.S. and saying, look, they haven't invaded yet. What's the problem? It's screwing with our prices, and the problem is the second that you say, what's the problem? You turn on your back, and guess what? Crimea's gone. So, the Blazing Wizard, am I the resident troll? I had been thinking is Andring, but Andring's a bit more than a resident. I he's like a host, so it's not like a host. He is a host, so he's a host troll. So the Blazing Wizard Pope is now our resident troll, as opposed to our head mod. I've noticed why. Oh yes, In Time has a disproportionate number of trolls in key positions, I'm noticing. I'm not sure how it happened, and I'm not proposing a solution to the problem, but I have noticed. I'm just saying. Yeah, I can ask our head advisor as to what we can do about that, but our head advisor is also a troll. All right. Oh, and we've got Joe coming in, so let me get Joe. Oh, there we go. Oh, no, I think I just missed it. It's one of the reasons I really detest using Skype is the amount of time that I get. There's a little warning on the call coming in. We're probably wrapping up as it is. Is that called strategic trolling? Oh, here he is. Let's try this one more time. There we go. How are you?
I'm all right, I suppose.
Oh, dear Lord.
Yeah,
I
fell asleep and I didn't have alarm set.
Oh, no worries. What I'm going to do here is actually probably can't see anything, so let me turn that on, and there you go.
Oh, so you haven't started yet?
Oh, no, we're up. I just didn't have that. I don't know why this. Every now and then there's something on the settings go back. No, we're going. So
okay.
But you weren't in on the start, so it didn't. There's a separate signal to go to you, and it just wasn't going. But it is now, so now you can see the show. So
gotcha.
Welcome. We did do the rundown. We covered all sorts of things. Let's see. The biggie is, well, Trump's lawyer met with the Fulton County District Attorney's office in Georgia. Probably, we know they've opened an inquiry into election tampering, and the fact that they're meeting with him suggests to me quite strongly that they're looking at charges and they're trying to negotiate how and when and what that's going to look like. And then, of course, the voting rights bill and trying to reform the Senate rules and eliminate the filibuster, which has actually, people sit there and say, well, gee, that's never been done before. It's been done several times. It's been done at least once by each party. That's how.
In fact, I forget where I saw it. There was a statistic that someone told me, like the number of exceptions carved out for a filibuster is like 101 thing, literally 101 things that are exceptions. So it wouldn't be different than anything we've done before.
No, and it was how Trump got his 3 judicial nominees, because they carved out that exception for that too. So, the Dems have done it, the Republicans have done it. So that, and of course Crimea, they did meet and they had a discussion, Putin and NATO, and they've basically said that they haven't really made any progress. NATO is willing to compromise on a few things. They are not willing to compromise on being told by Russia who can come in and who cannot.
Right.
And they will not move back to their 1979 borders, which is what Russia is saying are the 2 things that they absolutely must do. So, and that's where we are.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to remember you. Okay. So, a couple things. I mean, beyond that, one that I think that is kind of key as far as potentially preserving democracy is that they're starting to push back. The GOP members are starting to push back on Trump. And I think that's important. I forget his name in South Dakota, but Rounds, I think. Mike Rounds, I think it is. So he basically came out and said, look, we just lost. We had fewer votes. We didn't get our people out. We got a lot of people out, but they got more out, and we need to stop pretending that it was stolen. It wasn't stolen. This was a very secure election, and it was one of the best on record. So let's stop fooling around and wasting time, and just acknowledge that we lost and move on from that. And so, of course, Trump attacked him. And a bunch of Republicans are now actually attacking Trump for saying that, including Ann Coulter, which I find very interesting. And then the other thing was, in an example of Trump actually trying to do something. Well, I don't know if he's trying to do something good, but actually doing good, whether he's trying to or not, is basically, but he was also taking a shot at DeSantis, basically saying that, 1, people should get the booster, and 2, that politicians that don't acknowledge whether or not they got the booster are cowards. Now, that was a shot specifically at DeSantis. But it's interesting as to why he's shooting at DeSantis, because, DeSantis up to this point has seemed kind of like the heir apparent. So it's interesting if Trump gets into a fight with DeSantis, then that may hurt DeSantis's chances of picking up at least some of Trump's followers, because there were a lot of Trump followers who were never political before, but they got involved for him because they really loved him. And obviously the fact that he got so many votes, that he got over 70 million votes. You think about it, he beat his previous total by like 8 million votes.
That's true. Yeah.
So that's because, again, there are a lot of people who are not politically engaged, but like him for whatever god awful reason they have. So, but I don't think, and I talked to some people who are so afraid that DeSantis is going to pick up all the Trump followers. I'm like, look, Trump is his own thing. He's got this weird type of charisma that appeals to a certain set of people, and DeSantis does not have that. And he can blow all the same dog whistles. It is not going to have the same impact. And particularly if DeSantis and Trump get into a constant pissing match with one another, that will hurt DeSantis, which I'm happy. I'll keep on fighting, guys. Keep on fighting. But yeah, so basically, but it's interesting because Trump's basically saying now, yeah, get vaccinated and get boosted, which I had a lot of people over the years tell me that, oh, well, you just hate him because who he is, and you don't actually have any legitimate gripes against him, and you never give him credit if he did something good. I'm like, no, I always said if he did something good, I'd say so. And well, telling people to get vaccinated and boosted is a good thing. Way to go, Don. You're still a scumbag, but hey, you're telling people to do a good thing, and I'm going to give you credit even if I think you're a scumbag overall. And to the point real quick, just to jump back, and it's something I keep harping on, but the point, I got an argument with this past week in the Saturday thing with somebody about the 2016 primary and the 2020 primary and all that. And the point I keep making is there's a lot of people who they're mad that Bernie wasn't the guy and blah blah blah. But my thing is, again, did you show up to the primaries? You can complain about the process all you want and say it wasn't fair or it was unbalanced. But at the end of the day, if you didn't show up to fucking vote, it's your fault that he wasn't the nominee. So, and considering that the turnout on both the turnout for the 2016 Democratic primary was 15% overall, and the turnout for the 2020 was 18%. There was a lot of room that really almost anybody could have won the nomination if enough of their people got out to vote. So,
And now please.
Sorry, go ahead.
So the other thing is, I guess Trump did a interview with NPR recently, and he walked out. But before he did, they was asked why did they accept the votes in Arizona if it was rigged, and his answer was, well, because they're rhinos, Republican in name only. So he called out basically the entire state of Arizona, at least the entire Republican. He called out the entire state of Arizona, then he called out Mitch McConnell, saying that Mitch McConnell was a loser, and that's why this was happening, and they hadn't found the votes, and yada yada yada. So now there seems to be some pushback on that.
That's the thing, because a lot of Republicans are coming to Mitch McConnell's defense. And mind you, I don't like Mitch McConnell either, but But Trump is wrong, at least in this particular regard when it comes to McConnell, and right, because basically,
are we through a looking glass that you have to say that fucking sentence with?
I know. Face? I mean, it's the weirdest thing. Watching all this fight, Ternessian fight going on between GOP, where I hate all the participants, but I have to root for some of them because for one reason or another. So it's a very odd place to be, but there we are. Trying to remember, there was something else that I wanted to bring up, and I don't remember what it was now.
Yeah, so I actually met Mitch McConnell once.
Really?
It was terrible. There was fire and brimstone, and then I woke up. It turned out I had no brain activity for a couple of minutes, and I was okay now, though. But I was like, yeah, that's about right.
You survived to tell the tale.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense that I'd have to have no brain activity to engage Mitch McConnell in any meaningful way.
Yeah. It's like the old joke about about the lawyer cross-examining the expert expert medical witness, and it's like, well, when you were examining him, what was his state? Well, he was dead. Are you certain he was dead? Yeah. How could you be so certain he was dead? He's like, well, I had his brain in a jar. And he says, and so you were certain he was dead at that point. He's like, well, he might have been practicing law somewhere, but otherwise,
what's the why do scientists use lawyers in their experiments?
Why?
Because there's some things a rat just won't do.
I love that.
Yeah. All right. Well, so that one and the others. What do you have when you have a lawyer buried up to his neck in sand?
Not enough sand.
Not enough sand.
That reminded me of one of the things I wanted to bring up. So, a judge yesterday, basically threw out. Prince Andrew was attempting to get his case thrown out, And the judge said no. So so that case is going to move forward. So they're going to, now what the outcome is going to be, who can say? But his attempt to shield himself from the embarrassment of a trial is dead. And he's got to, as much as it's, innocent to proven guilty, the fact is that he claimed not to know this person. And then there were multiple photographs showing him arms around her, all sorts of ways that, that you can't, it's one thing, you say, well, they were in the same picture as me, but I wasn't interacting with them. I didn't know they were there. I wasn't aware of them. But like, no, Andrew, you can't argue. You can't rationalize these away. And that's what convinces me that he probably did do whatever he's accused of, because what would be the reason to lie, right? I mean, if there was nothing going on, you could say, "Oh yeah, I remember her. She was a nice girl. I hugged her, but we didn't do anything. I knew she was underage. I wasn't going to touch her." But when you, I don't know that woman. I never heard of her. Like, yeah, you did it. You fucking did it, and you just don't want us to know. And then of course, once it comes out, it's like your credibility is shot to hell. So,
Yeah, it is hard to, it's mens rea, right? I mean, if you're lying about having known her and then it turns out that you did, it's sort of like, okay, you don't lie. Most people, 99% of people don't just lie for the sake of it. I think of Americans, actually. In Russia, they actually do. It's a cultural thing. They just lie all the time. And there's very specific reasons for it. It's an interesting cultural phenomenon.
Well,
I was there.
I could picture, especially like during the Cold War under the communist system, where the truth could get you in some severe jeopardy all the time. So I could see that people just, out of matter of course, just, hiding the truth because the truth can get me in trouble.
Yeah, about everything. I was there. I was in Russia for about a month. I was one of the last Americans out of the former Soviet Union before it collapsed. But by the time I left Russia, I almost got shot by a bunch of guys with AK-47s. Long story. But I got out alive and in one piece. And by the time I landed, they were shelling the tanks had gone down. I was like, I was walking down that street 48 hours ago, and now there's. Oh, shit. So yeah, I got out. It was just coincidence. I mean, nobody knew it was coming. But while I was there, I remember I was at a camp in Yaroslavl. I was in and there was a whole bunch of people there, and I've been friends with a couple of them, and I asked one of them, what he had been doing that day. He said, well, I was inside because it was raining, but now I'm outside. And I'm like, and they put it that way, and I was just like, it hasn't been raining. It's like, it hasn't rained in that's what I just like, they've been lying about everything, but they do it so there's always plausible deniability about everything all the time, and nobody has it, because anybody could be secret police. So it's just ingrained in the culture, because you never know who you're talking to. Anyway, so
well, that's what amazes me, the fact that there were dissidents at all, and there were dissident groups, because the risk of actually, basically, you metaphorically unzip your fly to say, hey, I think what the government's doing is bad, and just hoping that the other person, one, isn't secret police, or even if they're not, and just say, you say that to me because you really feel like, oh man, this is really bad. Now I might even agree with you, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't turn you in under that system, because I might need the points to cover my own ass.
Yep. It's a horrific system, and it worked for that. Okay, so quick $2 super chat from the Sinister Porpoise. Define two-sided and one-sided limits or not. Thank you for the last two words of that super chat, Porpoise. I think I'm going to go with my coward clause, my escape clause. No, I will not be defining one-sided and two-sided limits. I'll put you in touch with Landon. I'll give him a shout-out for you, and we'll get that sorted out for you.
Which Landon?
Landon Knoll.
Oh, different Knoll. Was there Landon?
Yeah.
I know two other Landons.
So, all right. So, yeah, I think that's, it's an interesting, and someday, I've told the story once or twice on this air before, tonight's not the night, but, I failed to properly bribe a customs official on the way out, which I didn't realize I was being asked to do. I'm a naive American. Even though I'd been told that you bribe customs officials and you bribe everybody over there, I didn't believe it. And when I refused to bribe one because I thought I was going to go to jail and then walked the other way, it turns out I went across the international borderline without meaning to, and none of the guards realized that I had been in this engagement, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of weapons were aimed at me and cocked, and it was fun.
Oh shit!
But,
I know I didn't have any weapons pointed at me, but I did get hit up for a bribe when I was leaving Guyana, with the former British Guyana. So what happened was, what they do there is, if you have bags to check, you hand your bags in. Apparently, they search all the bags looking for drugs or whatever, or contraband, or just things they want to steal. And then they wheel them back out, and you have to go up and grab your bag again. So what they do is, if they've searched your bag and they know you've got something in it, when you go to grab your bag, they'll arrest you right then and there. This way you can't say, "Oh, that's not my bag. You took it off the thing." So they brought it. It looked like all the luggage was already taken out, and I didn't have my bag, and I'm starting to panic because I don't have all my stuff.
Uh-oh.
And I don't know what to do. So then finally so I asked one of the security people, is there any more luggage? And so just then the last cart, what they do is there's just a big luggage cart, and it comes out. And then so she leads me to it, and which I didn't really need because I could see it. And then I found my bag, and then she goes, "Oh, now you can give me something." And I'm like, I'm like, what do you want? I mean, you want my phone number, or you want my, I don't know what you want. And like you said, yeah, you're so afraid because you're like, well, if I offer them money, am I getting entrapped? Am I going to go to jail? I didn't know what she was asking me for. Because I know, like in some countries, I've heard people tell, like if you go to Mexico, if you get stopped by the cops, they'll take bribes. But if you offer them a bribe, they will arrest you. They said, like I was told, like the way to do it is you either fold money up and put it under your license when you hand them, or you hand them your wallet and let them take what they want, and then they'll give it back to you and you'll be okay. But so I'm freaking the fuck out because I don't know what, is this a trick or what? So I ended up, I had a little bit of Guyanese money left, and I gave her what I had left, and she was satisfied with that. But I was so I again, I didn't have any guns pointed at me, so we're not quite the same situation, but it's still similar fear.
I was accidentally smuggling was really kind of the problem. It was an accident, but in fact I declared it. I just didn't realize it was illegal to leave the country with it. And I'm like, do you really have this? I said, yes. Like, and you declared it. I was like, of course, I declare everything on customs. Like, you can't leave the country with this. It's illegal. I was like, oh, so what do I do? I was like, I don't know. What do you think you should do? And I was just like,
shit.
Yeah. There was the whole, yeah. And I was
it was Russian currency.
Yes, it was Russian currency. That's what it was.
Well, see, what I would have said was, well, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with it, but maybe you could figure it out for me. Maybe you could bring it to wherever it belongs to go.
Oh, well, all I really needed to do was just like a single dollar bill. Like, well, I don't know if you had this one American currency, could I take this Russian and I would have solved the problem. But no, I didn't think of that. So what I did was I just said, okay. And I passed it back over the line to a friend of mine who actually ended up smuggling it for me because she was smart enough not to declare it. But as I'm coming back, they thought I was just violating the line because they didn't see that I'd gone over. And it's just, the whole alarm came out and they started aiming at me. That guy, the customs guy ran. He ran his ass off, which was good of him. I appreciate him. I don't think he'd have jumped in front of the bullets, but he did run. It's like stupid Americans. I was like, and so I was, but we got that cleared up, and then I think they felt so sorry for me. Now she tried to get through with a $700 earn, and she was smart enough to bribe them, but she did a really rookie thing. She bribed them too much. She gave them $10, and as soon as one of them saw that, 30 guys just came.
Oh God!
All want bribes! All want bribes! So like she doesn't go unless she gives everyone $10. She's like, I ain't paying that much. Oh, damn. Dear Lord. In time, where you discuss the proper etiquette for bribing international officials.
Well, it's funny. I got the former friend and former roommate of mine. He when he went to Trinidad, he got there and he was going through customs on the way in, and he was going there to do a job. He worked for a major instrument, vibration instrument manufacturer, and so they basically, the guy was like, oh, well, you have to pay the toll for your tools because otherwise we have to confiscate your tools. And he's like, okay, but I need a receipt. So he bribed the guy like $50 or whatever it was, 50 American to get it. And he actually put on his expense report, bribe $50. But it was hilarious.
In violation of the what's its act? I forget the name of the act, but the one that the Trumps sort of ran afoul of. But all right. Anyways, let's move on because I'm going to need to get.
Well, I think it was so funny and cool that Fauci, like, he was on a hot mic. Fauci called Rand Paul a moron.
Yeah,
and because he is. I mean, the thing is, he thinks, well, I'm a medical person, so, well, dude, you're a fucking dentist, and your certifying agency is one that you made because you didn't want to follow the rules of the national one that you used to belong to.
Yeah. Well, no, and yeah, I think. Well, I think Fauci gets to call just about anyone he wants to an idiot. I think I frankly think that should become law. He's put up with enough bullshit from people who aren't qualified to, at least medically speaking, shine his shoes. They may be smarter than him in other fields. Absolutely. Sure. Fauci's, not the end all be all of everything. But when it comes to this, he knows more than just about anybody else. And he's suffered more trying to help people than anybody else. I think if he calls you an idiot, I think that's, I think probably... he's got his head around his shoulder. He knows what he's talking about.
It's well founded.
Yep.
Well, and the thing, and like I said, Rand Paul, he keeps trying to, somehow get Fauci on some supposed gotcha, and I'm like, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just wrong. And all the other epidemiologists and all those, they're all like, nope, Fauci's right. This guy's wrong. He doesn't learn, but it's just he's trying to make some sort of political points. But it's like you don't know, you don't know, why do you're trying to make your points, and all your points you're doing is making you look foolish.
And you think they're making you look smart? I've seen a couple of those exchanges, and it's just been it's been horrific, and it's not good for anybody. It's not good for anybody. This is overly politicized.
Well, that's the thing, and it's especially funny when I see, on, various media sources, I'll see some right-wing media sources, and they'll show those same exchanges, and like, oh, here's where Rand Paul, owns, Fauci, and a lot of times, of course, it's cut off before Fauci's rebuttal, because they don't want to see that part where he just tears his guts out. It's Maya makes a good point. I mean, idiots think they're smarter than Fauci. I mean, idiots think they're smarter than everybody, and that's the big problem with idiots is they don't know they're idiots. They think they're clever, and they're really not because they're idiots. I mean, probably the best idiot is the idiot who knows they're an idiot, because at least then they know, oh, I am kind of an idiot, and they don't. But there's a lot of idiots, that think that they know a lot. Remember Nephilim Free? I studied this for 2 years. He thought going to creationist websites somehow made him an expert in evolution. Well, of course, his sources didn't know any more about evolution than he did before he started looking.
Titan. Congress, or as it's now known, Dunning-Kruger National Park. Well, and it's always been what I forget who it was, but he was a bigwig at the time in Congress. Decided that he was going to diagnose what's her name over the web, which was still very new back then, relatively speaking. This kind of thing. What's her name? She was brain dead, and there was a big thing. Congress decided to intervene. Terry Schiavo. Thank you. And who was the congressman who said I diagnosed her over the web?
He was from Florida. Bill Frist.
Was it Frist? And he actually has. I mean, he was a doctor, but it's like he never actually was in the room with her, and he's just like, no, she's fine. She was brain dead and lost 20% of her brain mass. She's fine. I'm telling you, son of a.
Oh yeah, no, I think it was even when I think she had 20% left.
Oh, 20% left. I thought she had lost 20%
left.
Oh,
and so remember you want to remember it was Frist, because he was from Florida, and he and his family actually owned some like major medical concerns in Florida. And so my wife actually had worked for companies that he owned. So she was well familiar with him from before he was even in politics.
I may try to get my sister on here. My sister was press secretary for Congressman. She liked to go by Congressman Helen Chenoweth. And,
cool.
And conservative. But she, my sister really liked working for her and was her press secretary for a while. But learning some of the ins and outs of what was going on, and she did all her stuff. She was on ESPN all the time. You'd see her down there on the floor, and but she was just like none of that. At first, she took it all very seriously. And when they held hearings on why. This was long before COVID, but they held hearings on why vaccines are dangerous and nobody should ever get a vaccine. She was just like, oh my God. And I know this from Congress because I was there when Congress, and then later, it took her 2 or 3 years, but later she's talking to someone else. She's like, wait, none of that is true? And they're like, yeah. She's like, well, how'd they testify in front of Congress if it's not true? Well, I mean, first of all, Stephen Colbert has testified in front of Congress, and I love Stephen Colbert, but let's start with that. And then I think Bert and Ernie have testified. I mean, the Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street have testified.
Dee Snider,
Elmo testified.
Lars Ulrich.
Yeah. So, and it turns out, and I remember this too, and I always say this, but I remember when Congress decided they were going to end file sharing, and so they went after Napster, and it was this big, huge thing, and they finally got Napster and took it down, and I was like, it takes 2 minutes of research on the web to find that of all the file sharing, Napster is the 5th largest and considered a joke by everybody who did file sharing. The only reason they found Napster was because Napster was the only one that had like an actual GUI and a user interface that was easy to use. And so all the idiots used it, while all the computer people who really knew how to do this stuff weren't affected at all because they used like pro programs that Napster couldn't touch. And so they're like, we destroyed this big Napster file sharing thing. I was like, you guys didn't do a dent in, and it was so that was my first. Congress really does kind of live in another world, and I think it would be nice to we should have somebody, like I said, it's just that I have access to my sister, and she was there for quite some time, so that gives me some insight as to how it works, and maybe someone who's worked for Congress and really get them in here to discuss it, because it's another world, and it's they sometimes hit reasonably close to the mark, but they also miss it pretty frequently too, much more than
the problem is, of course, the people in Congress, I mean, most of them, they tend to be, lawyers, accountants, financial people, and they may know something about that part. But, there's the occasional doctor or medical person. There's the occasional engineer or scientist, but it's very rare. And so you get these people like, remember Ted Stevens from Alaska?
Oh, yeah.
His whole thing about when they were talking about net neutrality and how and so there was the big thing about throttling your usage and the fact that he was basically saying that, well, the big companies should have to be regulated because and he referred to his email as "I received an internet," and he was slow because of it was the other internets were using it up, and it's not a big truck. It's like a series of tubes. They're like, oh my God, don't let this man near any legislation related to anything in technology because he has no fucking idea what he's talking about.
I remember that.
And then there's another reason. This was Michigan, not Michigan, but some Midwestern state. There was maybe it's Wisconsin. There was a reporter who discovered that the state website for the part that had the teacher's information had a wasn't really a bug. There was it was mistaken that if you look, he accidentally hit like the show codes, and he realized that behind the scenes the teachers' social security numbers were easily accessible from the website, and that was obviously not intentional. So he brought it to the state's attention, and then he and his editors held back on the story until it was fixed because they didn't want people to know and then go and grab the information. So then he reported on it, and the stupid governor is out there like, this guy needs to be arrested for hacking. And it's been explained to the governor, including by the FBI's cyber security division, that no, what he did was not hacking, and he literally hit the F11 key or whatever the hell it is, and he got to the codes. and that's not hacking. Doesn't constitute hacking, and anybody could have done it without any special knowledge or forethought. That was the problem, is that anybody could get to it easily without even trying. And he still even after that, still wants this guy prosecuted for what, asshole? He helped you. He saved your ass. He covered your ass, and you want him prosecuted because you don't understand the internet.
It just reminds me, and Porpoise may remember better than I. She was here when it happened, but we were on In Time, and we were covering something, and I think it was the U.S. State Department's website, and something had gone up with the code, so we all just looked at the code in real time on the show, and we're looking at it, and I was just like, I recognize these tags. And I'm looking at it, it's all WordPress tags. I was like, is this WordPress with the actual version number still? I was like, please tell me the U.S. State Department is not running WordPress. Yep, they're running WordPress without any security on the page. I was like, oh, dear Lord. Yeah, that's right. But I think Randolph has it. What's the opposite of progress? Congress or progress?
Yeah.
So the opposite of progress is Congress.
I'm just curious why Randolph Richardson capitalized capitalists. I mean, there's not like there's the secret order of capitalism. I really hate when people anthropomorphize things.
Randolph, he knows too much. He's figured it out, Randolph. The bird is in the air. I repeat, the bird is.
The pearl is in the river. But it's kind of like, I mean, anytime it gets done, it's just it's kind of like, actually. Did you see the first Wonder Woman movie? Did you see the first Wonder Woman movie?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so how Wonder Woman, she thought, well, if I kill Ares, there won't be any more war anymore, because that was the personification of war. And then she kills him, and then, of course, that wasn't going to stop war. And she's so disappointed because she believed, well, there's no war god that you can kill and make war go away. That's just like, okay, as much as, like, well, depending on who you ask, I guess I accept the label feminist. I don't use it because some women feel that men shouldn't or can't call themselves feminists, and I'm not going to argue with them on that point. But some women say I am a feminist, and I accept that if they do, so I'm good either way. But I hate when people say the patriarchy. No, there's patriarchy. There's patriarchal systems throughout our culture, but there's no building, patriarchy limited that we can go bomb and destroy the problem. So it's just silly.
That's a good point. That's an interesting. I've heard similar arguments to that I think you put it in a way that codifies it well for me. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, what's the capitalist demographic? I mean, I've got a business that I started. Technically, I'm a capitalist, but I'm also a social democrat. So because people don't know, are very confused about the terms. A lot of people who think they're socialists are actually social democrats or democratic socialists, which are different. But even then, even Bernie's not a socialist. He isn't. He's a social democrat, which is good.
I like what you said earlier too. I'll just say this as a tangent, which is Maya said men should be feminist, and Anjur said those women are wrong. In my personal view, I agree, but it is one of those things where it's like I don't have the biggest dog in the fight. I think as a human being, I do have a dog in the fight because what hurts other human beings hurts us all. But it's still not. So I have that. I used to make a big deal about it's like, can a man be a feminist and all this stuff. I was like, I don't. The title doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that we're all, So I'm a humanist first, and that necessarily would include feminism in any definition that I know, because you have to be for the equality of all people, and anyone who's suffering affects all of us. All right. So, anything else before?
If you'll indulge me for a second,
sure.
That's why, I get that there are. Okay, so like people who use the term SJW as a pejorative, I get that there are extreme people who are like, well, they're extreme, so they tend to be annoying and say ridiculous things and all that. But then some people have the attitude that, well, the whole idea of social justice is a bad thing. I'm like, well, all social justice means is to try to get not only equality but also equity in our society, and they're not the same thing. I actually saw a really good meme on that, where it basically showed, like, the whole thing of this people standing on the bods, trying to watch the baseball game, and then equity was, we're going to put up a fence and everybody could see through the fence, so it didn't matter how tall. We didn't have to go through all these things. But basically, we live in a society where on paper we have equal rights, but in practice we do not. And so social justice is merely trying to fix that, so we actually really have true equality and equity. And also that in order to do that, that may require redress of longstanding marginalization that has happened, have forced people, no matter how hard they've worked, to be left behind. So I don't know how anybody could be against that, because if we have true social justice, then that helps everybody, regardless of their race, regardless of their gender, sexual anatomy, gender identification, social status, education, all that stuff. So I just, it's something that was bugging me earlier today. I'm like, I'm just so fucking sick and tired. The true Puka calls them the anti-social justice warriors, the people who complain about SJWs, because they are anti-social people who complain about SJWs.
Hi,
Randolph Richardson.
Hi, my name is Maya, and I'm a social justice warrior. All right. Well, so, I know I said something that as the lifelong holder of the minority opinion, I suppose.
Maya, yeah. I am a social justice paladin.
Oh, dear. Okay. We get us. Okay. We're going to have a social justice cleric by the time all is done.
I am a social justice wizard.
All right. Well, on that note, barring anything else, was there anything else you wanted to hit before we bail?
Real fast. Let me check something real fast, and I'll tell you.
You check that. Can I explain why Dave Hume said it? And it wouldn't work. Wait. I have to do a math proof by induction for. Yes, that is, I think, the only proper answer to having to use induction on a math proof is to explain why induction cannot be rationally justified and not do the problem.
Oh God, please. Oh, yeah, there's a GOP lawmaker compares DC vaccine protocols to Nazi Germany. And that's the other thing that's driving me insane, is this constant beat of people from the right wing that want to take minor inconveniences and turn them into slavery, and they're suffering the Holocaust and all this ridiculous shit. And I was just watching with my wife tonight. We were watching another episode of Finding Your Roots. And they have had various celebrities on, and you find out some aspect of their ancestry, which is really cool. And there's always a cool story to be told. And I think that's true for everybody if you're able to do it. But we were just watching where both guests were black this time, and they were able to trace back to slavery and then deal with what shit their family went through in the post-slavery era, which was only barely post-slavery, basically, when you're dealing with sharecropping and black codes and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, if these people they're so upset over these inconveniences, what would they do if they were a Jew in the Warsaw Ghetto? Or what would they do if they were a black person in Arkansas when roving bands of white guys were just going around killing black people because supposedly one black guy had a dispute with another white farmer, and they just went around just killing people? Like, what would they do if they were really under somebody's boot? If they were in North Korea, And it irritates me. And again, they complain about the left, that say we're all snowflakes and we're victim culture, and they're the biggest fucking victim culture I've ever seen in the world.
I think you brought up an interesting point, so I'm really glad you brought that up. I saw a meme not that long ago because there was a snowstorm that came through and hit us last week, and it showed all the snow on the Capitol lawn. And you could see all the snow, and it was basically a blizzard there. And it said there hasn't been this much snow on the. There haven't been this many white snowflakes on the Capitol since last January 6th. And I got to tell you, that got me thinking that, yeah, because you've got these idiots, and some of them, I'm sorry, really are fucking idiots, and I don't think it hurts to call that out. When they come out and say, hey, we're going to start a revolution, and then someone gets shot and killed, and like, why are they shooting at us? You can't start, the revolutions are not bloodless, and if you really think you're starting a revolution, you're probably in for a world of fucking hurt, and you better know what the hell you're doing. And it's that's not a joke, and that's not something to take lightly. So if you're gonna, run around, so I got a little triggered by the woman who had done that because she got pepper sprayed, and she's leaving later, and she's like, they pepper sprayed me. Well, why'd they pepper spray? I don't know. Well, where were you? Well, I was inside the Capitol. You were inside the Capitol. I think that's why they pepper sprayed you. Well,
and she said, well, they were like, well, why are we there? Because it's a revolution.
Because it's a revolution, exactly. So, and you've got these people who, and I made the point earlier, I was not pleased with the 2020 vote, but it was the unpatriotic left that when Al Gore said the fight is done, despite the major problems, including the U.S. Supreme Court ruling with a decision so bad they said nobody ever better fucking use this decision ever again. And despite all that shit, this I hate America liberal said, okay, we don't agree. In fact, we know for a fact we got fucked, but we're moving forward because that's what you do in a civilized country and in this, what ostensibly is supposed to be the greatest democracy in the world. But the Republicans lose, and it's not all Republicans by any stretch of the imagination, so let's be a little careful with that. But this group that we all know who we're talking about, the mangas, they sit there and they're like, well, no, I can't possibly have lost. Trump is too awesome of the awesomest to have actually lost. This can't be. And, my TV must be telling the truth when people on it suggest, despite what every court has found and all this other stuff. And they go on and that they are absolutely the snowflakes. And I will point out that they say that being forced to wear a mask is somehow a violation of their freedom tantamount literally to a Jew being forced to wear a Star of David. And I'd like to point out they're already required to wear clothing. You can't walk into Burger King fucking butt-ass naked. You can't do that. You can't do that in any state of the union. You can't even do that in Texas, for fuck's sake. In Texas, you cannot do that. Maybe you could get away with it in Florida. It's illegal, but at least I get the fact you could probably get away with it in Florida. Nonetheless, we are asking for one more piece of clothing to be required over your face for medical reasons. The same reason why there has to be a salad guard, a sneeze guard over the salad. The same reason you can't wear a sleeveless shirt over a salad bar, yada, yada, yada. We already have all of these rules. It's adding one more rule that these snowflakes haven't figured out. I understand the slippery slope argument. I ain't an idiot, but it's one more rule about clothing that has to go over the face for very good reason. If you don't do it, you're likely to kill someone.
Well, that's right. And actually, the slippery slope argument is actually a logical fallacy. So even then, I get the idea that because it's like, well, what happens next? Like, well, because the problem with the slippery slope is that basically it's the assumption that we can't ever draw a line, like we can't figure out how to draw lines. Like if we said, okay, well, here's where we're at, and we have to allow for 5% more, that somehow, that we're going to base the next one based on where we are now and not where we started, which is ridiculous. Occasionally it comes up, but you have to have evidence to back it. But it's really distressing. This constant, yawning, and like you said, there's such ridiculous snowflakes. The funny thing was, I remember seeing, I saw this thing it was George Carlin, actually. He was in an interview with Larry King. And it just kind of goes to the whole thing about punching up versus punching down. I actually, when Dave Chappelle did his most recent thing and he, and then he said that he didn't believe that punching up, punching down was a thing. I linked that I tweeted that to him because basically George Carlin said flat out, he's like, look, you can do whatever you want. You can say whatever joke you want. However, he said, humor and comedy has always been speaking truth to power. So he used the terms punching up and punching down. Then we're talking. Carlin died in 2009, something like that. So it's a long time. He said that typically, that basically if you're attacking downward, that you're just being mean. You're just being vicious. And he actually said flat out, it was like, basically right-wing white guys who are threatened by, women and racial minorities and all this kind of stuff. And here we are in 2021, and we're seeing like, wow, George, you were right on the fucking mark.
I need to get a copy of that link. I think, Maya says, I have conservative friends. I think they're a little weird, but at least they have thoughtful reasons for arriving at their conclusions, which has been my experience. I mean, the ones that I'm able to be friends with for an extended period of time, and Zandering is definitely one of them. There are, he comes to by his conclusions honestly, and he doesn't. But the manga crowd, the an MTG follower could never be my friend. I think that it's very hard to find anything that you could have in common with. I'd like to think you can be friends with just about anybody, but yeah, I think it's I think that's
well, especially I mean over the last 5-6 years, really.
Yeah.
I've shifted a lot. I used to be the type of person that I could be friends with almost anybody. I'm not anymore. And it's not because I got so much more liberal. It's for basically I got to the point where, it's one thing I could see somebody, they have their reasons, but, I might think the reasons are wrong, but it's not that bad. But we reached a point now where a lot of the differences are not over simple disagreements, or especially like there's a lot of subjective things where we don't have any facts to say one thing might seem better than the other, or it's subjective. But there are some things that are objectively provable, and people want to believe something different than what's objectively provable. And then when you dig deeper, you just find, a fundamental difference of values. And for me, if we can have differences of opinion. You could think taxes should be lower, and I could think they should be higher, or whatever. Or you should think the government shouldn't be involved with certain things for freedom's sake and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if you think that certain people shouldn't get the same rights as everybody else, or aren't true Americans because they don't perform certain performative functions, or because they're the wrong politics than you, or whatever. If you think there are some people are lesser, I can't mess with that person. We have a fundamental difference in value. So I won't stop being someone's friend over a simple difference of opinion, but I will over a fundamental difference of values.
And I think a fine note to end on. I think a good way to look at it. So thank you all for joining us. Like I said earlier, tomorrow we will have on Commander Lance Mcmillan, who was one of the head advisors for the Fifth Fleet out of CENTCOM to plan the invasion of Iraq. And he is going to be discussing with us what went wrong from nuts to bolts with the invasion plan, and why he believes it had absolutely nothing to do with any intention ever of actually winning the war in Iraq. So please join us tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for Lance Mcmillan planning the war in Iraq. Joe, thank you very much. I'm glad you were able to make it. It's always better when you're here, so thank you so much for doing that. And look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Have a good evening, all. And there is, of course, all right. Good night. Welcome to In Time. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. We read all of your comments, and if you like this video, please don't forget to share.